Around 10 Russian motorcycles and several armored vehicles are being pushed toward Kramatorsk, but many of them are not reaching the Ukrainian trench line. They are being pulled into a battlefield where speed no longer guarantees survival. In Donbas, Moscow is changing its attack pattern. Instead of relying only on large armored columns, Russian forces are now using motorcycles, small infantry groups, and a few armored vehicles to probe Ukrainian defenses, search for weak points, and open a path for the next wave. On paper, this looks faster and more flexible. In reality, it may be turning into another trap. Armored vehicles are easier to spot from above. Motorcycles are faster, but they offer almost no protection when Ukrainian FPV drones dive toward them, or when mines break the route ahead. One explosion can throw a whole group into confusion. One blocked road can turn a moving assault into a line of exposed targets. That is why the fight near Kramatorsk is not just about a few motorcycles being destroyed. It may show how Ukraine is turning the Sloviansk and Kramatorsk area into a brutal test for every Russian assault tactic. If armor can be seen, infantry can be tracked, and motorcycles can be hunted before they reach the trenches, then the real question becomes much bigger. How can Russian forces break through a fortress belt when the sky above the route has already become part of Ukraine's defense? Russia's shift toward motorcycles near Kramatorsk is not a sign of confidence. It is a sign that traditional armored movement is becoming harder to protect under Ukrainian FPV pressure. The first problem begins before Russian troops even reach the trench line. Heavy armored vehicles can still carry soldiers and firepower, but they also make noise, leave clear tracks, and move along routes that Ukrainian reconnaissance can study in advance. Once a column enters open ground, mines can slow the lead vehicle, artillery can hit the road behind it, and FPV drones can strike the weak points from above. That is why Moscow is trying to change the shape of the assault. Motorcycles offer a different answer. They are smaller, faster, and easier to push forward through broken ground. A rider can move across a field track, cut along a tree line, or slip through a narrow path where a larger armored vehicle would struggle. In the first few seconds, that speed matters. It gives the attacking soldier a small chance to cross the most dangerous space before Ukrainian fire can fully react. But this advantage is very thin. A motorcycle does not protect the rider from blast, shrapnel, rifle fire, or a drone diving into the route. It cannot absorb a mine strike. It cannot shield a soldier when the bike loses control at speed. Once the rider is seen, the same speed that helped him move forward can also make his path easier to follow from above. That is the core danger in this new Russian approach. The assault depends on staying ahead of Ukraine's targeting cycle, but Ukrainian FPV teams are trying to stretch that cycle open. They do not need to stop every rider at the same moment. They only need to see the route, follow the movement, and strike when the group begins to lose shape. A motorcycle group moving toward the trench line may look scattered from the ground, but from the sky it can form a clear pattern. The lead bikes show the direction. The rear riders show the depth of the group. Any sudden turn, stop, or gap tells Ukrainian operators where pressure is starting to build. If one bike slows down after crossing damaged ground, the formation behind it must adjust. If another rider swerves around a crater, the spacing changes. If a mine explodes near the route, the entire movement can become readable within seconds. This is where the battlefield turns against the attackers. Russian troops are trying to reduce the time they spend exposed, while Ukraine is trying to make every exposed second count. FPV drones can be launched toward the route, and reconnaissance feeds can keep watching the group as it moves. The motorcycles may still be fast, but they are no longer moving through empty space. They are moving through a corridor that is being measured from above. The result is a dangerous trade-off for Russia. Armored vehicles bring protection, but they attract heavier attention. Motorcycles bring speed, but they leave the soldier exposed. Small groups may reduce the risk of losing many men at once, yet they also make coordination harder once fire begins. So the real issue near Kramatorsk is not only the loss of bikes or riders. It is the loss of control over the approach. Russia is trying to choose when and how the assault begins, but Ukrainian FPV drones are increasingly deciding when that movement becomes a target. Russia is now pushing a hybrid assault model near Kramatorsk, combining motorcycles with armored vehicles to create speed and firepower in a single move. But this design is also creating more weak points under pressure. In this structure, motorcycles move first and try to open the path. They rush across open ground, test the reaction of Ukrainian positions, and try to force defenders to reveal where their fire is coming from. Behind them, a smaller group of armored vehicles follows, ready to support with heavier weapons or carry more troops forward if a gap appears. On paper, this looks like a balanced system that can move fast while still holding enough strength to continue the attack. The problem starts with timing. Motorcycles and armored vehicles do not move the same way, and they do not react to danger at the same speed. Riders can accelerate quickly and change direction, while heavier machines take longer to adjust and often depend on fixed routes. As the front element pushes forward, the distance between the two parts of the force begins to stretch. What starts as one formation slowly becomes two separate groups moving at different rhythms. This gap becomes dangerous the moment Ukrainian FPV drones enter the fight. If the motorcycles move too far ahead, they lose the protection that the armored vehicles were supposed to provide. They are left exposed in open ground with no cover and no immediate support. At the same time, the vehicles behind them are easier to track because of their size and movement pattern. If those vehicles are slowed or forced to stop, the link between speed and firepower breaks. A single disruption can spread through the entire assault. If one armored vehicle is hit at the front of a narrow route, the rest of the vehicles behind it may have no space to move around. They slow down, cluster together, or try to reverse under pressure. While that happens, the motorcycles that have already passed that point are now cut off from any support. They cannot go back easily, and they cannot wait in place without becoming targets. This is where the battlefield starts to favor the defender. Ukrainian FPV teams do not need to destroy every element at once. They can choose where to strike first and let the situation develop. If the rear vehicles are stopped, the forward riders become isolated. If the lead element is disrupted, the rest of the group loses direction. The entire attack begins to lose its shape, even if only one or two targets are hit at the right moment. The hybrid model also creates confusion under stress. Motorcycle riders depend on speed and spacing to survive, but when the formation stretches, that spacing becomes uneven. Some riders move too far ahead, others slow down to avoid obstacles, and the group loses its original pattern. Armored crews behind them must decide whether to push forward into danger or hold back and risk leaving the front element alone. These decisions happen quickly and often without clear information. From above, this breakdown becomes visible. A clean line of movement turns into scattered points. A planned advance turns into a series of small reactions. Each reaction gives Ukrainian operators more data about where the formation is weak and how it is trying to adapt. This is why the hybrid assault does not always deliver what it promises. It offers flexibility at the start, but it depends on coordination that is hard to maintain under constant observation. Once the connection between the fast element and the supporting element is broken, the entire structure becomes fragile. In the end, the combination of motorcycles and armored vehicles may look more advanced than older tactics, but under FPV pressure, it creates more places to fail. The most important shift in this fight is that the battle no longer begins at the trench line, but at the moment Ukrainian FPV systems detect movement along the approach routes. When a Russian assault group starts moving across open ground, the first contact often comes from above, not from soldiers waiting in defensive positions. A line of motorcycles cutting across broken terrain, or a set of armored vehicles following a known track, can appear as clear signals on reconnaissance feeds. FPV operators do not see just individual targets. They see direction, spacing, and timing. A group of motorcycles may look scattered on the ground, but from the air, it forms a clear shape. As the formation moves forward, small details begin to matter. A rider adjusting course around damaged ground creates a gap. Another closing that gap changes the spacing again. A vehicle slowing down to avoid an obstacle forces others behind it to react. These changes do not stop the advance, but they reveal how stable the movement really is. This is where Ukrainian FPV teams begin to apply pressure. They do not always strike immediately. They watch how the group behaves under movement. They wait for the moment when the formation loses its clean shape and begins to show weak points. That moment can come from terrain, from a small delay, or from a simple loss of rhythm within the group. When armored vehicles are part of the movement, they become key reference points. Their larger size, fixed routes, and slower adjustments make them easier to follow once identified. FPV drones often focus on exposed areas such as the engine section, the rear part of the vehicle, the tracks, or the top surface. A well-timed hit in one of these areas can slow or stop the vehicle, and that single change can affect everything behind it. Motorcycles face a different type of risk. They depend on speed and open space, but they offer almost no protection once targeted. A rider hit by blast or fragments loses control immediately, and the bike can crash or block the path for others. Even without a direct strike, the need to avoid incoming threats can push riders off their intended route and into more dangerous ground. The combination of mines and FPV drones makes this situation even more complex. Mines do not need to destroy every vehicle. They only need to disrupt movement. A damaged track, a blocked wheel, or a sudden explosion forces the group to react. That reaction creates the exact moment FPV operators are waiting for. Once the formation slows or changes shape, the next strike becomes easier to guide. Certain locations amplify this effect. In areas like Chasiv Yar, these features have been used to turn normal routes into controlled kill zones. Vehicles enter thinking they have found a passage, but the route has already been studied and prepared for engagement. As one vehicle is hit, the next one is forced to stop or adjust, and the entire line begins to stack up under pressure. A path that looks clear at ground level may already be mapped from above. When a motorcycle pushes through such an area, it is not just crossing empty space. It is moving through a corridor that has been measured, watched, and prepared. In this environment, FPV drones do more than destroy vehicles or eliminate troops. They reshape how movement itself is understood. Every approach route becomes a potential line of fire, and every decision to move forward becomes a calculated risk under constant observation. A small assault can collapse in layers once the first strike breaks the rhythm of movement. The scene begins with a group of Russian motorcycles entering open ground toward the Ukrainian line. At first, the formation looks controlled. The riders are not packed into one tight group, because that would make one explosion more dangerous. They keep space between the bikes, hold speed, and aim for the same direction. The goal is simple: reach the trench line before Ukraine can fully react. For a short moment, the plan appears to work. The motorcycles move fast across damaged soil, past shell marks, broken tracks, and open patches where stopping would be deadly. Each rider depends on motion. Nobody wants to slow down, because a motorcycle has no armor and no safe place to wait. The only protection is speed, distance, and the hope that the route stays clear long enough. Then the first break appears. One rider changes direction to avoid rough ground. Another bike behind him adjusts too late. The spacing begins to shift. The formation still moves forward, but it no longer looks clean from above. Ukrainian FPV teams now have a better picture of where the group is strong and where it is starting to bend. The pressure increases when a drone closes in. If the group has a jammer bike, that target becomes critical. A jammer can disturb the video feed, weaken control, or buy the riders a few more seconds during the final approach. That is why Ukraine may try to hit it first. Removing that electronic shield can open the rest of the formation to cleaner strikes. Once the lead bike or the jammer bike is destroyed, the assault loses its center. The explosion does more than remove one rider. It changes the behavior of everyone around him. Some riders turn away from the blast. Others slow down because smoke and debris block their view. A few continue forward, but now they are separated from the group that was supposed to move with them. This is the moment when panic begins to replace planning. A rider may abandon his motorcycle and run toward the nearest tree line. Another may try to escape along the same track he used to enter. A third may stay low beside a fallen bike, hoping the smoke gives him cover. But these choices do not restore the assault. They break it into smaller targets. The tree line may look like safety from the ground, yet it does not end the threat. FPV drones can follow movement along the edge of the woods. If a soldier runs between trunks, he may be watched until he stops, turns, or exposes himself again. Cover becomes temporary. Concealment gives only a short pause if the drone still knows where the man went. The next layer of danger can come from the Russian rear. A relief group of tanks or APCs may be sent forward to recover survivors, add firepower, or keep pressure on the Ukrainian position. But this rescue effort has its own risk. Heavy vehicles move along clearer routes, and once they enter the same watched area, they can become part of the same trap. If one armored vehicle is hit near the approach lane, the others must decide quickly. Push forward into the danger, stop in place, or turn back under observation. Any delay gives Ukrainian FPV teams more time to strike again. The failed assault now pulls more assets into the kill zone. That is the deeper danger for Russia. One broken motorcycle attack does not always end as one small loss. If Ukraine keeps visual contact and maintains FPV pressure, the damage can spread from the first riders to the retreat route, abandoned vehicles, and even the rescue force sent to save them. The fighting around Kramatorsk is not a series of isolated skirmishes, but part of a larger pressure campaign that is shaping the wider battle for Donbas. Each motorcycle push, each small assault group, and each failed advance connects to a bigger objective. Russian forces are not only trying to reach a trench line, they are trying to push against a chain of fortified cities that form a defensive belt across Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Druskivka, and Kostiantynivka. This line is more than a set of positions. It is a barrier that protects the remaining Ukrainian hold in western Donetsk. To break that barrier, pressure is being applied from multiple directions. Movement towards Sloviansk is not coming from a single road. One axis follows the line near the Siversky Donets River from the northeast. Another pushes from the southeast along routes linked to the Sloviansk and Bakhmut corridor. These directions are not random. They are designed to converge toward the same objective and force Ukrainian defenders to react on more than one front. This creates a difficult situation for Ukraine. Defensive units must divide their attention, their FPV teams, and their artillery support. A response on one axis can leave another side thinner. A strong focus on one approach can open a gap somewhere else. Russian planners are trying to stretch the defensive system and find where it begins to lose balance. At the same time, conditions on the ground are changing. As vegetation grows thicker and weather becomes less stable, visibility can drop at key moments. Fog, rain, and dense tree cover can reduce how clearly movement is seen from above. These changes do not remove the threat from FPV drones, but they can shorten the window during which a target is visible. That short window is what Russian assault groups may try to use. Small units can move closer to the front before being detected. Infantry can advance under cover of terrain. Motorcycles can pass through narrow paths where visibility is limited. In these moments, distance matters. But this advantage is not guaranteed. The same terrain that offers concealment can also create predictable routes. Roads, forest paths, small bridges, and trench crossings become natural channels for movement. If Ukrainian reconnaissance has already identified these paths, then reduced visibility does not remove the danger. It only delays it. Once a group enters one of these channels, it can still be tracked and engaged. This means timing becomes critical for both sides. Russian forces must decide when to move, how fast to push, and how to use the environment to reduce exposure. Ukrainian defenders must decide when to observe, when to strike, and how to manage their FPV resources across multiple directions. The fight becomes less about a single clash and more about a sequence of decisions made under pressure. In this context, the motorcycle assaults near Kramatorsk take on a different meaning. They are not only attempts to reach a trench line quickly. They are tests of how far Russian units can move under changing conditions and still keep their structure intact. The outcome of these tests matters beyond the immediate area. If these smaller attacks fail to break through, they still reveal how the larger campaign is developing. So the story of motorcycles on open ground is tied directly to the wider struggle for Donbas. It reflects how tactical adaptation meets a defensive system built to absorb, observe, and respond. And it raises a deeper question about the next stage of the campaign, where each movement is watched, and each route can become a point of decision. Kramatorsk is now showing one of the hardest truths of this war. Speed can save an assault for a few seconds, but it can also mark it for destruction. Russia is no longer relying only on heavy armored pushes. It is using motorcycles, small groups, and mixed assault teams to reach Ukrainian lines faster, test weak points, and reduce the time spent in open ground. But that change comes with a dangerous cost. Armored vehicles bring firepower, but they are easier to track. Motorcycles move faster, but they leave soldiers exposed. That is why the fight near Sloviansk and Kramatorsk matters far beyond one road or one failed attack. It shows how Ukraine is trying to turn mines, reconnaissance, FPV strikes, and kill zones into one connected defensive system. In the coming weeks, Russia may try smaller, faster, and more hidden assaults, especially when fog, rain, and tree cover reduce visibility. But the open question is whether those changes will break Ukraine's defense or simply create new targets for FPV teams waiting above the battlefield. So what comes next? Will Russia find a way through the fortress belt, or will speed become another weakness in Donbas? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this breakdown was useful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Military Force for more clear analysis on the weapons, battles, and geopolitical shocks shaping today's war.